Donald Trump making a big initiative, getting rid of DEI, no more DEI. And, well, it's upset a lot of people. A lot of people, including those people over at Davos, by the way, because just a couple years ago, they did a whole thing about DEI. Like, that was the whole reason for being back in 2022 at the World Economic Forum. Well, this is kind of tough, especially for one Joy Behar and her guest there. Oops, Joy Behar. I meant Joy Reid. Joy Reid on MSNBC. All these joyful people that aren't so joyful. Joy Reid on MSNBC and her guest are flipping out, and you're never going to believe who they're worried about most.
Return the Constitution to do his evil and wrongness.
Let's put some stuff up here. He was very excited about the end diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the federal government. What's the impact?
Yeah, so that's obviously very bad. It's particularly evil to. I always think of prisoners, people who are incarcerated who have changed, who have transitioned. According to this, you're going to take trans women and put them in male prisons. What do we think is going to happen to them there?
Yeah.
That's not going to be a good day.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a thing that has real impact. There's also a real obvious equal protection challenge. And so, again, Trump will do this. He will be sued. This is one of the ones that could be, if not completely stopped, delayed. But there will be people who suffer unconscionable pain because of what he's doing, and not in the kind of like, somebody just called Gracie George. No. These are people who are going to be hurt and physically assaulted because of Trump's executive order.
Two of the renamings, we were talking about it in the break. Rename Mount Denali back to Mount McKinley, just as it's not.
Oh, don't even get them started on that one, right? Denali, Mount McKinley. I'm sorry, you really think that's the first thing that comes to mind? The trans female prisoners? Prisoners being kind of one of the highlight words there. I mean, they're in prison because they committed a crime. But your biggest worry over in MSNBC is what it means for trans female prisoners. I mean, what about the poor kid growing up in Appalachia that's been working his tail off his entire life to try and get into a really good school and needs a scholarship for that really good school? Doesn't have two dimes to rub together, but turns out the wealthier kid from Massachusetts that happens to have a different skin color and is black gets a cakewalk of a ride, even though maybe that student doesn't have the same grade point average, right? So the poor kid in Appalachia gets completely screwed because you're choosing based on color of someone's skin. I mean, that's just unconstitutional. That's just flat out discrimination. And Harvard had to hear that from the Supreme Court. But over on MSNBC, they're not taking that angle. No, they're taking the angle that somehow it is really, really bad for transgenders in prison. This is just the scariest thing. I'm like, okay, they're in prison. Guys, you know what? This is why you lost. This is exactly why you lost, because people are so sick of you looking out for everybody except for the hardworking Americans that make this country happen. You're going to continue to lose if this is the narrative you're going to spout. So you know what? You do that all day long because it's going to be MAGA for as long as the eye can see. We're talking 28. We're talking 4 years after that. Hey, they're getting Barron ready to run. All right. So we're going to have a good long run because you stupid people have stupid ideas. Listen, it's part of it's coming out of academia. I'm just going to give a plug for a wonderful organization that I am so happy to partner with. It's called the Herzog Foundation. Herzog Foundation, I talk a lot about how our nation's public schools are corrupting our kids, putting all these really weird ideas. I mean, I have a friend whose kid is in 5th grade. And she told me, actually this happened when he was in 4th grade, that he had to actually say what gender he was, like what his gender preferences were when they went around the school. And he had to write this down, and he had to say whether or not he could talk about this at home, because God forbid, if your parents are not okay with your gender thing, well, somehow the school's going to intervene with the government and God knows what to get in the way. And don't forget, Biden signed off on that executive order saying that kids under the age of, or over the age of 12 and over, didn't need any kind of parental consent on their medical stuff. I mean, it's messed up. So clearly, like, schools are messed up and they're doing really scary kinds of things. And I would say, look, if you're somebody who has sort of true American values, if you have Christian values, then you're kind of caught in this very bad spot, which is why I love this organization. Herzog Foundation is committed to having Christian education for our youth, K through 12. And they can guide you if you're interested in this, like if you have kids or if you have grandkids and you're just kind of, oh, what do I do? What do I do? Where do I find a good Christian alternative to public school? Herzog has a ton of information. They are really just prolific in terms of their publications as well. They have something called The Lion, which is their new podcast, or rather The Lion is the website. They also have a new podcast called Making the Leap. And there's all kinds of information and advice for people that are looking to make that switch. And it's not an easy thing to do, I get it. But if you're interested in moving your kids or your grandkids or you have friends that are interested in this, check out the Herzog Foundation today.